I think the first time I began to realise that I was different, or that I felt differently, and that I recognised what that was, I was probably 16 or 17. But I think once you come to that realisation, you then start looking back through your childhood and you realise that actually there were a million markers earlier on, and I think just depending on the environment that you grew up in depends on whether or not you recognise them. Yeah.
It's a very different experience to me. I mean, I grew up, just in this heteronormative bubble, that was all I knew. And I think I started realising that wasn't me and that it was a bit different when I was 17 because of her. So we'd been friends for, a good 3 or 4 years or so. And we had a very, very strong friendship. And that friendship grew, and it probably took about 2 or 3 years for me to even clock why it was different.
Spoiler alert, it was not a friendship.
Yeah. The first thing I thought was, oh my God, I don't want to be that kid. I don't want, on top of being bullied for other stuff, really? Is this really going to be my life? And I think because we discovered something so amazing and special in our relationship, that made me think, well, okay, this is it, and it's worth fighting for. And I think that was a real turning point for me.
When we first realised that we were different, we were in an environment where we didn't know that it was wrong, or didn't understand enough about the social history of anything to realise that people might be against it. So initially we were very open, and it backfired in a big way, because we didn't understand why all of our friends were suddenly saying, what? Like, I don't want anything to do with you. Because as far as we were concerned, we didn't really have the terminology or the understanding. We just thought we'd found something really exciting and special, and we wanted to share it with all of our friends. And we finally were in that sort of giddy teenage situation that all of our friends had been in when they were talking about boys, and we were just not really understanding it. Suddenly we understood it, and we were trying to be the same, but we weren't getting that same response.
Coming out to our parents was probably
mixed.
Not the way that we would have liked to have done it necessarily.
Mixed.
Very mixed. But once we went to university, it was like the floodgates opened, and we were much more open, and it felt like we were allowed to be open and a bit more liberated, because we weren't living with parents that didn't necessarily agree with it, and were trying to closet us, rather than us closeting ourselves.
Not just the parents, because I mean, obviously the parents have an effect because you live with them, but it's those friendship groups. I think. We found that I would say maybe 90 to 95% of our friends wanted nothing more to do with us at all. So that was a huge change for us. But at the same time, we were also just about to go away for uni. If you're going to lose all your friends and start again, probably a good time. But that then made us probably obnoxious to be around at uni, because we were so out and so happy. And we decided to just go into it with this theory of nobody knows us, so we're going to arrive already gay, and then they can't be angry with us for lying to them,
Yeah.
And so we were just very out.
So Ames and I met at a Christian youth group, which is just like the worst kind of environment, I suppose.
Which is probably why 95% of our friends disappeared, because a lot of them were from that realm,
And we just, like Ames said, we just couldn't understand why they didn't get it. What was so wrong about us having these feelings for each other when everything about Christianity is based on love.
Yeah, we had been celebrating and preaching love with these same people for years, and suddenly we were saying, we understand, we're feeling love now, and they're going, oh no, that's not the right love. You can't do that love. Since we've moved here to Southland, our experience of being an out queer couple has been very different to what it was in England. So in England, we had had a lot of negative experiences. We had been thrown out of clubs. We had had abuse thrown at us on the street, all sorts of things. But here in Southland, It's interesting, when we first came, lots of people said, oh, you'll have to be careful, Invercargill, you know, it's really backwards, like you're going to have to be careful, very conservative. But that has not been our experience at all. We've not had any trouble at all and no negativity. You know, people in Southland, I think, yes, they are leaning more towards a conservative mindset, but they're also really laid back, accepting people. So that might be their view, but they're very unlikely to throw it at you in the same way that a Brit would. Even the small things, you know, like booking a hotel room and going to reception to check in. In the UK, it was always, do you realise, I think there's been a problem, you've booked a double room. We never get that here. You know, people don't automatically assume that there's been a mistake. It's just, you know, you are who you are. To be honest, anywhere you are, in general, the people closest to you, the people that form relationships with you, have no problem at all because they recognise you as another human. It's in public places. So even in that area, when we used to go to pubs and things, we'd still have people giving us funny looks across the table and stuff, which we don't get here.
For me, our experiences in Southland really helped me find a label for how I feel and how I identify. So when we were first together, I didn't have any other terminology other than I either gay or bi, or like who knows what. But like I didn't have any words for it. And then when we moved here and started meeting other queer people that actually had more language, more vocabulary for it, I discovered the term pansexual, and that has actually really positively affected me, just because I feel like it's okay that that's what I am. I don't feel like I have to be, you know, pigeonholed into the lesbian or gay term, which I don't feel really fits with me. So that is probably one of the biggest effects on my personal life, was just finding a label that I felt worked for me.
And I think also the experiences that we've had here in Southland being so positive has kind of allowed us to just mellow into ourselves and just be comfortable in our sexuality and in who we are, because suddenly we don't have to be overt in order to fit in with that realm, and we don't have to be hidden in order to fit in with another realm. We can just be who we are in our own personalities, and our sexuality is just a part of that, instead of having to be at the forefront of it. We saw a poster for a coffee support group that was being held at Narkiti every other Tuesday, and there was a phone number, and we rang the number and said we were new in town and that we'd like to meet people. But anyway, we got the details and went along, and initially there were, I think, 3 people.
Yeah, and then we walked in, so that made 5 of us.
And we continued going ever since. And from that group, once that got a little bit bigger, an idea was formed that actually Southland could really do with something that covered more than just social support. And that's where the idea of Chroma as a fully fledged charity came from. My favourite thing that Chroma does is advocate for our community within the wider community and workplaces and things like that. So we do something called Pronoun Lowdown, which is a workshop explaining pronouns, the use of pronouns, the need for correct pronouns, and the effects for getting pronouns wrong. And it just gives people really easy hands-on tools that they can use in their workplace or at home or just in their sort of wider lives.
I think one of the things I'm super passionate about that we do is our whānau support group, Step Up. I think for me it was so important to set it up because yes, we need to support people that are coming out or discovering, you know, their gender identity or their sexuality or, you know, whatever. But also I think if the family members and parents have questions, they need to be able to go to people and get real answers. There's a lot of information on the internet and some of it is incredibly good and some of it, as we know, is not. I think for me, that group has been really important, because if we can support parents of young people that are coming out, or support family members who are really struggling with, use of different pronouns, or the transition, and are worried that their family member's making a poor choice, if we can talk to them and help them to understand, then they're much more likely to be able to support their whānau in a positive way.
I think my hope for queer people in Southland is that they can all have the positive experience that we had moving into Southland, and have that feeling of welcoming and safety that we had. I recognise that not all queer people have had that, and certainly we did not have that outside of Southland. And I think my hope for non-queer people of Southland is that they continue in this positive, accepting development of our community. I think that diversity throughout our whole community, our workplaces, everywhere we go, is really the richness of Southland.
I agree with everything that Ames has said.
Yay.
I think when I look at us as an entire community and an entire population, whether we're looking just at Southland, just at Invercargill, or, the whole of New Zealand, I just want people to be recognised as people. We spend so much time looking at what makes us different, whether that's hair colour or eye colour or skin colour or, nationality, whatever it is. We spend so much time looking at those differences that we forget to look at what makes us all the same. I think the important thing is that we celebrate our diversity, that we continue to be visible, but that we also remember that we're all human. So that's a bit of a bigger picture kind of thing, but yeah.